Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. So we're going to enter the last part of our keynote today. It's my great pleasure to welcome Colin Kennedy, who is the founder and CEO of Shelf. So, Colin, take it away.
Thank you. Can you hear me? All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate all of you sticking around to take in the last couple of sessions. I can say this was my first time at KM World, and it most certainly won't be my last. The amount of lessons learned and just key takeaways that I was able to get from all the speakers and honestly all the attendees was fantastic. So thank you all for being so forthcoming with sharing your knowledge with me and everybody else these last couple of days. All right, so the topic that I'm going to be talking about today is something that we're all probably somewhat familiar with. That's AI and the future of work. But what I really want to do is just give you a quick glimpse into how we look at this at Shelf. If you're not familiar with Shelf, we are a modern knowledge platform. We've managed to triple our growth as a company in each of the past 3 years. So it's something that I'm personally very proud of. And I would attribute that to really 3 things. First is just having an amazing team, which we do. Second is having really inquisitive, fantastic customers that are just very passionate about solving knowledge problems. And the third is a clear vision around how AI and knowledge management need to intersect in the future to be able to derive positive business outcomes for organizations. And so with that in mind, in vision, I figured that I should start off with like the original godfather, visionary of knowledge management, and let Peter Drucker say a few words. And he started out by saying, indeed, the most important, unique contribution of management in the 20th century was the 50-fold increase in the productivity of the manual worker in manufacturing. And cut to today, where are we? Lo and behold, AI and robotics are automating most manual manufacturing processes. So I think he should be listened to seriously when he says the most important contribution that we need to make in the 21st century is to increase the productivity of the knowledge worker. And I was actually thinking about this quote as I was sitting in Wednesday morning's Keynote panel session, which hopefully all of you caught because it was fantastic, the one led by Patrick Lamb. And at some point, they put up this beautiful Venn diagram, which showed the intersection of data science and information science and knowledge management. And I'm not going to attempt to like distill it because I don't have the means to do that. But I will give you just like my key takeaway, which hopefully all of you had as well, is that there's a little too much, friction between those 3 disciplines, right? There's competition for human resources, for budget, for stakeholder support. And going forward, we really need to be able to collaborate in a more effective way. And I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment, right? Because the question is, what other choice do we really have, right? The world continues to change at an accelerating pace. And if you don't believe me, just take into consideration the fact that today on this planet, there are over 1 billion knowledge workers. And I would say, thank goodness, there are over 1 billion knowledge workers because we are dealing with a massive amount of information. I'm sure all of you are well aware of this, but really started with the internet. In 2010, cloud computing started to accelerate this, and it's not changing anytime soon, right? The hockey stick is only going up and to the right, and things like COVID have only fueled the creation of this information that's needs to be managed, needs to be dealt with. And the reality of the situation is that we as humans can't do it alone, right? And so that's where new technologies need to be thought about, need to be considered. So that's things like robotic process automation and, of course, artificial intelligence. So there's this competition taking place. We've got this huge influx of knowledge workers, a ton of information being created, more each year. And the question is, who's winning? Are knowledge workers actually becoming more productive? And the answer, by and large, is no. And the reason why, there are a couple of reasons why. There we go. Is because people are spending too much time looking for information, right? McKinsey says that 19% of people's time is spent just looking for answers. One of the other speakers yesterday in one of the breakout sessions had that number at 12 and a half hours per week, not 7.5. So the problem may be even worse than I think it is, which according to this data is people are spending about 360 hours each and every year just trying to find stuff. That seems like a drag. And so the question is, what are we going to do about it? I said a minute ago, a new approach is needed. I think that Peter Drucker is clearly more eloquent than I. And I love this quote. He says, "The greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, it's to act with yesterday's logic." So clearly we can't keep doing what we've been doing. Something needs to change. But before we get into the solutioning, it's always a good idea to just level set and take stock of what the roadblocks may be. What are the things that are going to inhibit us from making progress? And if we're clear on those, then we can devise workarounds. And so from Shelf's perspectives, this productivity drag has roadblocks in 3 key areas. It's answer delivery, right? We already covered that in an earlier slide. It's, can I get to the information that I need quickly? And too often the answer is no. If you do solve that problem as an end user, as a consumer of information, you're forced to reckon with the fact that is what you found relevant to you in that moment, yes or no? And even if you've got these 2 first pieces figured out, there's a third problem that is certainly a conundrum for many knowledge managers and many organizations is that information actually still accurate? Have I been able to maintain all of the content that exists across all those silos? And when you stack those up together, it can be a pretty daunting challenge. What does this look like from a technology perspective? I kind of think about it in terms of channels. So there are communication channels, right, where a lot of that unstructured information is being created, those questions that are being asked. Maybe it's email, more likely it's Teams and Slack. And that's not talking to the applications often enough. And in applications is where a lot of extremely valuable structured data exists that provides the context around what actually needs to be done. Not only are those two not talking to one another, too often where that knowledge resides is disconnected as well. So what happens is a knowledge worker has a question, and instead of getting an answer, they are hit with those roadblocks. So what's the solution? From Shelf's perspective, it's really about starting to think about knowledge as infrastructure. And that's like kind of a squishy term. So what it really means to us is to be able to provide a single source of truth that is open, extensible, and can connect to other systems readily so that you can start to create a better tomorrow. And what that better tomorrow looks like is when you get the infrastructure right, you're able to start to layer on artificial intelligence, end user feedback, and what that culminates in is a newfound ability to identify issues and correct content, improve content faster than you ever could before. It's about connecting to those interaction channels, those communication silos that I talked about earlier, so you can get the raw, unfiltered questions, like the source of truth of the problems that people are trying to solve, and be able to marry that with the unstructured information that sits in your knowledge repository. And then last but not least, it's about being able to bring the answers forward into the places where people actually do their work. eliminate that need to task switch and go someplace else because it feels inconvenient. And every time you're creating a barrier for your knowledge workers, you're reducing the likelihood that they're actually going to make use of that valuable information that so many of you create and curate. When you get this right, what it looks like is actually a pretty virtuous loop where questions get asked and then answers get delivered pretty much immediately. And that's really what the future, in our view, looks like. It's a world where when questions get asked, answers can be delivered in seconds, on demand, wherever that end user is. But that's not enough, right? Knowledge teams, content teams need to be able to actually learn quickly. So you need to be able to understand in a matter of minutes what gaps may exist between the problems that people are trying to solve and the answers that are being given and the information that's contained within those knowledge platforms. And if you can do that, it allows you to actually improve that content in a matter of hours as opposed to days, weeks, or not even knowing that it needs to be improved upon. Maybe that's a little too theoretical, so I'll just give a quick, hopefully practical example with one of our customers. Some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with HelloFresh. If you're not, they're the largest fresh meal delivery service on the planet. So they operate in, I think, 25 different countries across 4 continents. And in this case study, we're considering solving knowledge problems for their contact center. So where they came from, because it's been about a 3.5-year journey that we've been on together, is they had over 14 different knowledge silos when we started working with them. So information all over the place, incredibly challenging to be able to provide a consistent response to customers when there's 14 different places that agents could potentially go for information. So step 1 is to consolidate so that you can audit and cleanse that data. Second step was to be able to connect that data, that knowledge, to structured data sources. In this case, their CRM, their phone system, so you can actually understand the relationship between the reality of what's happening out there with their customers, what's really being asked day in and day out across their 1 million+ interactions, and what are the answers that are actually being given back. Are they great answers? Are they poor answers? It was hard to say. Once you've done that, the next step was to be able to create that feedback loop and allow AI to help dictate what needed to be improved upon. And the end result was we're now able to automate the delivery of answers to their thousands of agents in real time across each and every of their 1 million daily interactions. I said earlier, we're very passionate about creating tangible business outcomes. So you may be wondering what those were. I recognize that many of you are not well-versed in contact center terminology, so I'll explain these. AHT stands for average handle time. And so the best way to think about this is we were able to take an average interaction, whether it was a phone call or a chat, from 8 minutes down to 6. So not only does that allow the business to run much more efficiently, you can handle more interactions with fewer agents, but it's also a better customer experience. I mean, who wants to spend 8 minutes on a call when you can get off in 6? FCR is first contact resolution, and that is exactly what it sounds like. Are you able to solve that customer's problem the first time out or not? So not only were we able to create more efficiency, we were able to create a scenario where you had more satisfied customers that weren't calling back because they were given bad information. And when you marry those things two together, then you get customer satisfaction scores that increase, right? My customers can get in and out faster. They get the right answer more often than not. And what this really does is it unlocked millions of dollars of ROI value for them because they could actually run a more scalable business and actually retain customers more predictably and grow their customer base more reliably. So I'm getting ready to close out. I hope I'm not over time or anything like that. But I recognize also that probably none of you work for a fresh meal kit delivery service. If you do, come talk to me. But the good news is if you get the infrastructure right, like this works across industries, this works across use cases. This works across customer size. I know because I've seen it firsthand. I mean, this is what we do all day, every day for customers like these and others that we haven't listed. So the future state that we envision and that hopefully some of you are coming along on this ride with me, it's very much achievable. Now, I don't know exactly what the future will look like, but what I can say with a high degree of confidence is that there's no putting the genie back in the bottle, right? AI is out there. It will only improve and only become more applicable. And what that means for the knowledge managers in the audience is that it's going to be able to automate a lot of those mundane tasks that you have to tackle that frankly suck, and pull down your time so that you can focus on more strategic initiatives. And I think it's an exciting future because as that starts to happen, I think organizations will be able to realize what knowledge managers really are, and that's like one of the most strategically valuable roles in their entire organization, and most have no clue that that's the case. So that's, I think, my time, or at least that's my last slide. So I'll just say thank you all for listening. I appreciate you being a great audience. And I'll just say that to close with Peter Drucker, I, again, am not smart enough to see what the future holds, but if I listen to a pretty smart guy, I can know that I can actually predict it because together we can create it. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Colin.